we might kick off with the panel. So for those of our lovely panel members, if you slowly want to come off mute, and I'd actually like yourself to introduce yourself and describe a bit about what your organization does as well. Jamie, I might throw to you first.
Great, thanks, Shek. My name's Jamie Fellows. I am the area head of HR and inclusion for British American Tobacco in Southeast Asia. So we cover Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Samoa, and the Solomon Islands, here based in Sydney. What does British American Tobacco do? Well, it makes, sells cigarettes in those territories. So we grow leaf, tobacco leaf in Fiji as well. And we make cigarettes in the South Pacific. And as I say, we market and sell them across the patch in Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, etc. So that's me, and that's what we do.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, mate. And Nicola, I might ask you to go next. Share a bit more about you and what you guys do.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Nicola Brune. I'm a past graduate within the Kraft Heinz program. I was part of the graduate program 4 years ago. So I'm now the production manager at our Golden Circle site in Brisbane. So a little bit about Kraft Heinz. So we're a global food and beverage company. We've got a footprint pretty much across the entire globe, and particularly within the Australia and New Zealand business. We've got a lot of big brands, so Kraft, you would know of, Heinz, Golden Circle, Saxa. There's quite a few, and we've got 10 factories across this area, as well as our corporate teams based in our Melbourne and Auckland offices.
Awesome. Thank you for your introduction. And next up, I might throw to Cassandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassandra Smorelli. I work at Reece. So some of you will be thinking, you know, this is just about plumbing and not so sexy. However, I'm here to change your mind on that actually. Reece is a 100-year-old business. It's an Australian iconic business. And what we do is really centered around water and thinking of that in relation to why it's important to be an organization that is so centered around something that is critically important to all of us. So we have over 800 sites across Australia and New Zealand. We are also global. We have representation in the US. We have over 8,000 team members, and we have multiple brands, not just the Reece plumbing brand, but we look at other segments. We look after certain segments: heating, cooling, refrigeration, agriculture. So you think water, you think Reece. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, Katie from Procter Gamble.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Katie. I'm what we call the customer team logistics lead here at Procter Gamble, so working in supply chain. Procter Gamble is a bit of a global juggernaut, so Fortune 500 company, operate all over the world, and have brands such as Gillette, Olay, Oral-B, lots of personal health and consumer products that you find in your local Woolies and Coles.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And what we might do off the back of that is just on this panel kickstart with a couple of questions to help our grads and students out. So what I might do is I'm going to get one of you and pick on you a little bit, and we just throw it around the circle. But I might throw, Katie, sorry, you're online already, so I might throw to you first for this one.
Sure.
What do you think is the most important piece of advice you'd give to students, aspiring to work in this sector as well?
So we are obviously in the FMCG sector, and a lot of the work that we do is, as much as I work in supply chain, is incredibly multifunctional. So everything that I do is supporting our sales team, supporting our marketing team, and supporting across different functions in the business. So I'd say for me, my biggest piece of advice coming into a sector like this is just being really open-minded about what you're going to learn, and being open to kind of the opportunities that you have to expand your skill set as well. So even though I work in supply chain and kind of studied to be in supply chain and ended up here, a lot of the skills that I have are transferable across sales, marketing, across finance, and really being open to those kind of opportunities and skill sets that you get by operating across those teams.
Awesome. Thanks for the insight there. We're going to work in reverse order, I think. So, Cass, I'll throw to you next to share about Reece and sort of your perspective on it.
Sure. So I forgot to mention what I do at Reece. And so I'm in the people and culture team, and I look after products and services across Australia and New Zealand. And how this relates to what's the most important advice for people getting into the industry in the sector. I think one of the most important things here is around problem solving, and something that I think we do a lot at Reece. And we're solving customer problems through product, through service, through a number of things. Where I see people enter into this industry and thrive are the people that are really attuned to the conversation. They're truly leaning into every opportunity. They're learning a lot, asking lots and lots of questions, but equally they're applying that learning. So I'd say anybody that's interested in joining an organisation that's not just innovative, but relationship oriented, then this is definitely a space for you.
Yep. Thank you for sharing. And like you said, it's so true, always have to keep asking questions, always have to grow and keep learning. On that same facet, I'll throw to Nicola as well to speak a bit more on, I guess, advice again for students aspiring to work in this sector. What would you say?
I think it's really important to, I guess, learn about how broad of a scope there is in this sector. There are roles in marketing, there are roles in HR, there's roles in supply chain, in operations. And, if we look at, say, Kraft Heinz, for example, we think, oh, it's food, it's going to be really straightforward, but we don't often think, particularly coming out of university, what a broad range of roles there are. So I think understand a little bit about those roles, but then be really open to trying new things. You may not have studied exactly where you want to get when you get into the workforce, and that's okay. But being open-minded and having that approach, I think, is really beneficial as a graduate.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, Jamie, mate, you're full of wisdom. You have been. So do you mind sharing what sort of advice you would give?
That's terrifying, isn't it? I'm full of wisdom, but there we are. Look, I think in terms of FMCG, look, it's a really fun and exciting place to be. I mean, that's the one thing I would say that people before they join may not know about the sector. And I agree with what everybody else has said. It doesn't matter whether you're in HR, it doesn't matter whether you're in marketing or operations. And I would agree that all of these companies will give you opportunities where you can spread your wings across all of those. There's very, very few types of industry where you can do this. But the other piece is you're really feeling part of that organization and making a difference, because you can see your products on the shelves. In industries, in companies other than BAT, you can see them advertised. You can see people sort of going in, and you can see them. You can use your own products, and that's really exciting. And if you're close, whether you're in the operations side, you can see it being made on a day-to-day basis. If you're in the sales side, you can track your share growth, your profit, and that for me has always been the most exciting part of it. For tobacco, as part of that. The obvious thing to say, I would, from my perspective, is don't necessarily take it at face value. I think, I joined, hopefully I've got not too much wisdom, but I joined as a global graduate myself back nearly 20 years ago. And the other thing these companies do is they provide you with such a platform for your career. If you'd have told me, and you can all tell from my accent that I'm a Brit, if you'd have told me 20 years later I'd be here in Sydney with the same company, having spent time in places like Romania and Switzerland, I'd have said no way. But the opportunities that these companies can provide, the experiences, and I would say the culture as well. These are good, fun places to work with great people, and it's never a dull moment. So I'm an FMCG, you know, of course, but I think these places are wonderful places to work, and you'll, as I say, never regret it. I never have.
Awesome. There you go. There was definitely some wisdom in there. But actually moves on perfectly from what you were saying, Jamie, into our next question. And I mean, I remember being a graduate back in the day, and I say back in the day was not that long ago, I hope. But one of the things that was quite daunting was sending for an application and not knowing what I needed to do to progress to the next round. So if you could actually speak on it while we're on you, Jamie, as to what your organization actually looks for in an application and what students actually need to do to progress to the next round of interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, look, for me, for graduates, we're always looking for potential. Okay, we're looking for potential. We're looking for people who are able to show to somebody. They don't have to have done the job. They don't have to have any work experience, actually, but they need to show those key traits in terms of leadership and the ability to learn, that shows us that these are individuals that are not just here for sort of 12 months, 18 months, but can actually grow their career with the company for 5, 10 years and be the leaders of tomorrow. Now, I've worked in HR my entire career, but I actually started off as a chemistry student. So when I applied to BAT in 2002, which scary enough doesn't feel that long ago to me, all it was, you know, the company, I think, saw that there was an ability to apply a learning, to be able to take insights and turn them into something that was more tangible, to be able to communicate, to build relationships. And that's what you've got to show in your application process. You don't have to be a technician or an accountant or an HR practitioner before you join the graduate scheme. You just have to show examples of where you've been able to lead. Is that a sports team or a community? Is that where you've been able to work with the community, whether you've been able to show growth, whether that's at university or college or in your personal life? And those are the elements that companies like BAT are looking for, because they're the elements that say, hey, that's somebody that's going to learn, that's going to grow, that's curious, and that would be a really good fit within this organization, that we can help them grow their career when they join us. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what we're looking for graduates who join.
Fantastic. Great share, and a good value add for, you know, students as well, because it's always so daunting. I mean, Nicola, can you add on that? Because I think it was only 4 years ago that you mentioned you were a grad as well. Share your insights on that.
Yeah, definitely. So we are also looking for the future leaders of tomorrow. We're looking for people with a willingness to learn, with the right mindset, really that growth mindset, ability to think critically, to problem solve. We don't recruit a particular degree type. All degrees are welcome to apply. And I think if I was to give one piece of interview advice, having been there not too long ago, it's to show confidence but not arrogance. Anyone can see straight away if you're arrogant, and no one wants that in their team. So it's how to show that you're a team player, that you're going to help everyone out, and really drive the organization forward. So that would be my advice.
Great, thanks for the share, Nicola. Cassandra, do you mind actually sharing about that, in particular focusing on how they can show those sort of skills? You know, if we have those sort of skills, how do we show that on a resume or on an application?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the bespoke question. I can do that. So in particular, and I concur with everything that's being said on the panel in terms of what we look for. We're absolutely in the same market here, looking for learners, looking for people that are collaborative. How do you show that? I think there's some distinct ways to show that. One is in the face-to-face interview, genuinely listening, absolutely leaning into that conversation, having some great examples. So you might get some questions around, tell me about a time when, those lovely HR questions we like to ask, those behavioural questions, and having that foresight to think through So what are the sorts of things I can do to demonstrate that? Have I been in a team? Have I played sports? Have I had a part-time job? Have I problem solved? What have I had to do to resolve these sorts of things with others? And really having that time and thinking through those examples, that's one thing you can practically do. The other thing you can practically do to see how to create that impression is just be yourself. I think like Nicola mentioned, people can sniff out inauthenticity. Being yourself, being authentic to who you are is really, really important. We're not looking for the same cookie cutter person. We're looking for people to have the right attitude, that right growth mindset, and to be authentic to who they are, because we're invested for the long term. We're not looking for somebody in the graduate scheme to be here for a short time. In fact, if I was in a position of a graduate thinking about my aspirations, work backwards. So if you've got an aspiration to be a director of some sort or a general manager, thinking through that backwards and thinking, okay, so aspirationally, I want to do something really, really senior. What do you think you'd have to do to make that come to life? And I've been a grad myself. I was probably alumni a while ago, 20 plus years ago at Bayer Pharmaceuticals. And I look back at my experience as a graduate and I think to myself, so what was it that I did? I just put my hand up and I gave it a go. And I was genuinely curious. I genuinely wanted to learn, and that's what we're looking for. So I'd really suggest those things.
Awesome. That great insights, especially around being authentic. How often we think it's an interview and you try and go in and you try and fit the skill set of what you think they might be thinking about or looking for, but authenticity is super helpful. Katie, could you expand it out from your end in terms of what Procter & Gamble are looking for as an organization, or any tips to progress to the next round?
Yeah, sure. P&G currently has kind of over 100,000 employees, so you can get pretty far by Googling what a P&G interview's like, but I'll give you some pretty good tips. So one of the more practical things that we actually look for in the interview process itself is answering questions in something that we call CARS. So it means giving context, action, and then the result. And what happens is during your interview process, the way that the actual interviewers at P&G are trained is they'll prompt you to always answer in that structure. So if you get a question of, tell me about a time where you've shown leadership in a challenging environment, it's first giving the context of what happened, then what you did, and then what the result is at the back end. And it gives you a really nice structured way to be able to answer the questions. So that's probably one piece of, practical information that I'd give. And then in terms of any other tips, I'd agree with the others in that, there's this term called groupthink, right? Where you have people that are all the same and no one says something different, and then you don't end up with the right result. And P&G absolutely is looking for those different types of people and people that have come from different backgrounds. Potentially you don't have work experience, but what have you done in the meantime? Like Jamie said, what have you done in terms of being a part of a club or a voluntary organisation, or have you been on a board at uni? All of those different kinds of things. I would say for P&G, it is a top talent recruitment kind of company. So we are looking for those things, and potentially if you don't have those on your resume, it is hard to get through to the next application stage. So I'd consider those, and then also consider anything like other small kind of certifications that you can do along the way. Like if it's something like, we all use Microsoft Excel and you've done something like a certification, absolutely pop that on your resume too.
That was awesome. Yeah, those little tips and tricks always go a long way. I'm sure we can always Google, but it's always nicer to hear from someone within the organization, because it's actually like that.
My favorite is you see the rating of how hard the interview is on Google. So I wouldn't go by that. I'd just go by the tips.
Awesome. And speaking of, let's say we fast forward time, thanks to your tips, they've nailed the interview. They're in their first year of working with you. Like, what advice would you give them, students, to thrive in the organization? And in particular, please share the do's, but also what not to do as well in a particular organization. And Cassandra, I actually might start with you and get your perspective.
Sure. So as part of the graduate program that we've got here, we really do invest heavily in customer-facing experiences. In fact, we don't just do that for graduates. Any senior leader, any leader in Reece has the same experience, where we go into the network and we experience what the front line is with customers and with team. This has been an invaluable experience, to be honest, because where we really do place a lot of emphasis is on customer and is on team, but also in that experience. So I would say lean in and learn about the people, learn about the customer, learn about the dynamic, genuinely ride through that experience with your whole self. People that try and just, what not to do is see that as a tick the box exercise. I think that's probably where some graduates don't get the full benefit of the program, is where they feel like they're just going through the motions to get the job, whether the job is reaching at a certain level. It really doesn't optimize their experience, and actually it's not in the spirit of why we offer the graduate program. I would say the other piece of advice is that understanding the business is also about network. We're a relationship business, relationship with the customer, relationship with the team, and that connectivity is incredibly powerful when you're navigating through a really large organization, multi-site organization. So leaning into those relationships and having that connectivity across the board is super, super important. And how you do that, where I've seen it work particularly well, is people putting their hands up to do different things and experiences outside of what may be the norm. Projects, I'll give you a live example quickly. Recently, due to COVID, like every other organisation, we had an opportunity where we needed some people to go and help part of the network in Queensland. And our grads were the first ones putting their hand up saying, well, send me up, let me help. What can I do to support the team, the customer? That experience is invaluable in supporting community, in supporting teammates, and it forges such strong relationships. So that would be my advice in the first year.
That's great. Super helpful advice there already on what to do and what not to do as well. Jamie, I might throw to you, mate. Could you share from your end what students would need to do to thrive and what not to do as well?
Yeah, I'd agree with Cassandra a lot. Look, for me, enjoy it is number one. Big one. Graduate schemes, the first couple of years you're in, it becomes absolutely brilliant. You're not there to know anything. You're there to learn, and you're there to challenge what's going on. You're there to ask those questions. You're also, and I'll tell you this, you're also there to give your insights. It's amazing how connected you are, particularly for a consumer goods company, to actually consumers, because you're consumers. And you are the latest generation coming through. You've not sort of been indoctrinated with any company, whether it's a BAT or a Kraft Heinz or all this sort of stuff. You're fresh and you actually understand what's really going on. So challenge the status quo. Tell the company what's going on. Take the opportunities that are there, and take opportunities that aren't even there. Invite yourself to stuff. Make sure, one of the best pieces of feedback I ever got, I was at a meeting, as a graduate, a bunch of sort of very senior people, and I sort of turned to my boss and said, am I meant to say anything here? And they go, well, of course you are. That's why you're invited to the meeting. Everybody wants to hear what you've got to say, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And for me, that's what graduate schemes are all about. You're not there to get it right. You're there to learn. You're there, there's this sort of, there's that for fail fast and all this sort of stuff. It's about finding your identity, how you're going to manage, how you're going to learn, how you're going to solve problems, how you're going to understand the environment you found in. And they're great, fabulous programs to enjoy. We, like I'm sure the other guys, rotate around a number of roles, so you get an experience, whether that's in the commercial teams, whether that's in, if you're in finance, in various the finance functions, so you're getting a broad technical base, and that's great. But it's the opportunities you take within that to learn how it works, how to build relationships, how to solve problems, how to stretch yourself. That's what it's all about. And I'll come back to my first thing. It's about enjoying it. It is about taking the opportunities. These things are fabulous programs. And it's about setting yourself up for the next few years, if not maybe even decades of your career, with what you learn in those first couple of years. That's fantastic. Goodness gracious, if I was 21 again, it was a wonderful time.
Awesome. Always great to have fun. And just from the way you speak, you can see you've still taken that through, which is awesome. Being yourself, having a bit of fun. Nicola, can you share from your end as well what sort of advice you would give to thrive at Kraft Heinz?
I mean, I definitely agree with what the others have said. Certainly that willingness to learn, the idea of taking opportunities as they come up or making opportunities. It takes nothing to ask, oh, can I come into that meeting? Your graduate program only happens once. So you really need to use that opportunity to absorb as much information as you can while you don't have to know everything. You can ask why a million times and everyone will be more than willing to help answer your questions. But I think at the same time, it's really important to still realize that you will have responsibility in your first year. You're not just going to follow someone around. You will have tasks to do to build your own development. So you can feel important and fulfilled whilst also learning from those around you. And I definitely agree with what Jamie said. Often bringing in some fresh talent is the best way to actually take a step back and go, oh, wow, we kind of missed a whole piece of the puzzle here. Someone knows more than we do, even though they've only been here a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So yeah, probably the worst thing you can do is expect to just sit in the corner and spend the day on, say, an Excel spreadsheet and go home at 5 o'clock and be like, yep, whatever, I went to work. That won't cut it in a grad program. Not if you want to succeed. If you want to succeed, you've got to bring your full brain to work and fully embrace the experience.
That's great. And it's great coming from you as well, Nicola, because you've been through it recently as well. And absolutely, no one likes just a participant. You rather be actively involved in it. If you're going to do it, you do it well. And lastly, we'll throw to Katie. So what's your perspective on that? What would it take to thrive at P&G, and what's kind of the worst thing you could do as well?
It's actually a good follow-on from Nicola. It's quite unique, the graduate program that we have in P&G, in that versus a rotational program where you're going around from finance to HR to sales, etc. You're generally put into a role from day one. So it's always P&G has a focus on day one, making impact from the start, all of those kind of things. So for some perspective, two of the people that report into me, one has been with the company for 6 months, new graduate from UCID, and holds our main supply chain relationship with Woolworths. And she literally started 6 months ago from day one, met Woolies, onboarded into the role, and now completely does that role herself and leverages all the people around her to be able to do it successfully as well. So to say that it's not a challenge would be an absolute lie. It absolutely is a challenge, but I think the best thing that it gives you is when you're put into a situation where you have to really own it and you have to take responsibility and you have to find the opportunities, it makes you really switch on from day one, because you know that that's your role and you have a really important part to play in the business. And I think that's the feedback that we generally get from our graduates as well. They really actually feel part of the team and they really feel like they're making an impact in their everyday role, because their roles are really important to us. The other piece of advice that I'd also give is I actually didn't start as a grad at P&G. I started with some experience in consulting first and then came to P&G. But it rings true for everyone that's a new starter in the company, is like Cass said and Nicola said as well, you have to just take the opportunities, whether it's in your role or it's something external. So I remember after 6 months of starting, the girl who ran one of our E&I gender pillars, our women's pillar, left the company, and I said, you know what, I really want to do that, put my hand up and say that I want to do it. It's something completely co-curricular to my role, doesn't impact my everyday role, but doing that has given me not only some pretty broad exposure over business, but it also gets you to build relationships with people outside of your team as well, which is absolutely critical to having that role in the company. So yeah, I'd say two things. It's definitely a challenge, but it's just opening your eyes to it and taking the opportunity. And then, like I said, also taking those other opportunities that are outside of your day-to-day role that give you some exposure across the business.
Wow, talk about being thrown in the deep end with that story you shared. And we are coming actually, a couple minutes to the end of our panel as well. So I might give you all a bit of time to share, a bit of a final piece as to, students interested in this industry and sector. Why should they work with you? And what I might do is I might throw to Nicola first to share, and then we'll pass on.
Yeah, so I think if you've got an open mind, if you've got that willingness to learn, you should definitely apply for our graduate program. It gives an amazing opportunity to start your career and to take it in directions that you've probably never even thought of. I was in a very similar situation. It would have been 5 years ago now. And if I had been asked the question in my interview, where do you see yourself in 5 years? There is zero chance I would have answered where I actually am. I would have had some super generic answer, and it would have been in a much smaller role than where I've come. So I think if you're keen to accelerate your career, to see something and work on something really important, really exciting, I get so energized when I walk down the supermarket shelf and I see our whole range of Kraft Heinz products on the shelf. You should definitely apply to our program.
Thanks for sharing. Cassandra, I might throw to you next to share a bit about why students should work with you.
Sure. So firstly, congratulations on nearing completion or completing some of your formal education, and welcome to the next step in your education process, which hopefully is a graduate program. I say that in all sincerity because I think that whilst we value what you've done from an academic standpoint, we now want all of you. We want the authentic you. We want someone who wants to learn, is really clear about the growth journey they want to go on. Maybe not about what function they want to go on, but some opportunity to learn. Why Reece? So I could say it's because it's an Australian iconic organisation, because it has a very grounded space from a sustainability perspective. I could say that. I'm not going to. I could say it's because we are not only based in Australia, but also in the US, and we have some really ambitious plans. But what I will say is that it is an incredibly values-oriented organisation. We practice what we preach. It's so embedded, in fact, and I've come from some large organisations like Woolworths, like Coles, like Bayer Pharmaceuticals. I've come from a lot of different organisations, and what I will say is some of our values are so deeply embedded that they come off the wall into the vernacular of every single day. And I think that's a great learning ground for people that want to be nurtured and also challenged. And I think if you want that combination, then you should choose Reece.
Thanks for sharing. Jamie, I might throw to you next to share a bit about why grads should work with you.
Oh, look, I think there's two major pieces. Number one, you want a really, really global career, then join BAT. Not just in terms of the opportunities that you can have outside Australia, in Southeast Asia, working in Europe, in London, in the US, across the world, and they're real, but also working with people from all over the world. We've got so many nationalities here in Sydney, we've lost count. And on a day-to-day basis, you're just on the phone to the team in Malaysia, to the team in London. It's a truly international, truly cross-cultural organisation. And we do it really, really well. And it's a great opportunity for anybody who's interested in working internationally to start at BAT. The second piece is, yeah, we're 120 years old, but we are absolutely transforming this organisation at this moment in time. BAT is a company. It's turning from simply a company that makes cigarettes to one that makes new categories. So that's where it's legal. That's things like vapor. Now it's never been a more exciting time to be part of a company. think of the global scale, think of the opportunity, but think of the fact that we're actually doing something that's brand new to us. And we need you guys to come and help us with that transformation, to help us be more digital, to help us be more technologically enabled, to help us understand the new consumers in these spaces. And it really is seat of your pants stuff at times. So if you're up for it, and if you want to learn quickly, and you want the opportunity to work all over the world, then BAT is the place for you.
Thanks for sharing, Jamie. And Katie, I might throw to you last to share a bit about why grads should work at P&G.
Sure. I think some of us are kind of selling points and resonate with Jamie's as well. A massive international business, but one where I personally feel like I've never been lost. I think in some big corporates, sometimes you can feel like a bit of a number in a team, but with the responsibility that's kind of given to you from day one, you're able to be a real integral part of an international organisation. Same as Jamie, in that, you know, one morning I'm talking to my Australian team, and then by the evening I'm talking to the team in New York. So it really means that every day is so different, and you're getting to speak with people, build relationships with people who are from all over the world. I think the second part for us is we're actually really focused on, through our brands, doing more than just supplying products. For us, it's not just about manufacturing and shipping and getting dollars on the book. For us, it's about actually using our products to improve people's lives. And as well as that, having the right partnerships in place too. You know, we've recently just done a massive partnership with an organisation called -18, which is a LGBTQI+ organisation here in Australia. And those things make it really special to come to work each day, because you know that you're kind of using your power for good, that you're using this international organisation to really make a difference in some smaller organisations and in some massive kind of world issues that happen too. So yeah, I'd say same goes here. If you're kind of up for the challenge, you want those international opportunities, and you also want to be a leader, I think it's P&G is a good place to start. One of our biggest focuses that we also have is this idea of promoting within, and I can probably tell that the other organisations would follow a similar kind of path. But all of our roles from graduates up are generally promoted within, and it's actually incredibly difficult to get a role with P&G at a director, senior manager level from an external company. And the reason really is because we take our graduates and we build their skills, and we build them through the organisation so that they're the top contendees when it comes to a role opening or when it comes to something new. So I'd say for being at P&G, starting as a grad, it's the best place to start, and one of the easiest places to start with us as well, in terms of kind of getting your foot in the door.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, everyone on the panel, and great insights as well for the grads, not just in the industry, but tips and what it's like working within the organizations.